Greetings, Broadway babies. So, hey, it's Emily here. A week ago, I saw The Secret Garden at the Amundsen Theater, part of the Center Theater Group in Los Angeles. And I made a video about it with my husband, and it just came across really ranty and redundant. And I decided when I was editing it that I would scrap it because it just wasn't really the vibe I was going for. So I thought I would throw the whole thing away and start anew. I'm also very stressed out right now. March is my very stressful time of year because I'm directing 4 different middle school and high school shows at the moment, and it's a lot. I'm so ready for spring break. But I still really wanted to talk about The Secret Garden because I really love this musical, and I was really excited to see this production. So I hope you'll forgive me that this is just audio and B-roll this time around, but I think I still have some good stuff to talk about regarding this musical and this production. So The Secret Garden came out in 1991, and it's based on the book by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Is that right? Did I say her name right? I always mess up her middle name. Yeah, Frances Hodgson. I think it's the DGS there. Frances Hodgson Burnett. The early 90s were coming off of the big, bombastic mega musicals of the 1980s. And so The Secret Garden is a big musical in that kind of 90s way. So the musical is really unique in Broadway history because it was one of the few times, maybe one of the first times, a Broadway musical had a primarily woman-led production team. The music was by Lucy Simon, and the book and lyrics were by Marcia Norman, and the original production was directed by Susan H. Schulman. So that's lady writers and lady director. And a very kind of lady-driven story in a lot of ways. I think it's a musical that appeals to women particularly. One of the things Marcia Norman did was beef up the story. The original book is mainly from our 10-year-old protagonist's point of view, Mary, and the musical fleshes out a lot of the adult characters. And I heard that back in the day, there are some people who had problems with the book, critics and whatnot. I'm not one of them. I really like the stuff that Norman added to the musical. I like kind of the melodrama of it. Sorry, I think it works really well. And not just because it's a good old-fashioned love triangle and beautiful soprano ghosts floating around, haunting our Mandy Patinkin hunchback man. Also, on a practical level, when you have a musical, especially a Broadway musical, where the main character is a little kid, you can't put all of the onus on them and have them in every single scene. Even Annie gets to take a break. Even Matilda gets to go off stage while Mrs. Wormwood does Loud, And so I get why that happened all in this production. Mary needs to have a break. The adult characters have to have more of a presence. But, I think it's a beautiful score. I really like the ghosts in it. It's a musical that's always fascinated me because I've yet to find a comprehensive history on it. I'm actually really seriously considering writing my grad senior paper thesis on The Secret Garden. So I was excited to see this production. It's never been revived on Broadway, and that's another reason why I thought this production was intriguing. So we're in 2023 now, and The Secret Garden, this first big-scale revival in the United States anyway, is taking place at the Amundsen Theater. Now, the Amundsen is a big venue. It's known for kind of 2 different things. National tours go through there. I saw Hadestown there recently. Into the Woods will be coming out. But also, it's a good spot for premieres of new works, but new works that really need to be on a big stage and seen by a major audience. And contrary to popular belief, Los Angeles and the greater Los Angeles area, it's a big theater town. We have every kind of theater here, everything from black boxes, community theater, to major venues like Center Theater Group, the Geffen, and so on. So the Amundsen is great for musicals that are trying things out on a big scale, maybe eyeing a Broadway run. A musical I loved that premiered at the Ahmanson a few years ago was Soft Power. Sunset Boulevard famously premiered at the Ahmanson before going to Broadway with the whole drama with Glenn Close and Patti LuPone. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So, if a new production of The Secret Garden is going up at the Ahmanson, you know it got an inkling to go somewhere else eventually. And I hear this production is looking to tour and then maybe end things in New York. We have Broadway actors in the cast, most notably Sierra Boggess is taking on the role of Lily. It's a role that was originated by Rebecca Luker, rest in peace. And she kind of floats around the whole show and sings a lot of haunting melodies and kind of connects to all the characters even when they don't know she's there. The other cool thing is I know a couple people in the cast. My friend Peyton is in the show. Peyton is a former Disney cruise ship guy, just like Jeff. They happen to both play Buzz Lightyear at different times. But he's amazing, and he is a baritone bass. We don't get very many of those anymore. And The Secret Garden is one of those rare musicals where you have people with different vocal parts. I feel like the 90s was one of the last time you got that, like a character who is a soprano and a belter and an alto and a tenor. Like we have one of each. How rare. So as I mentioned, the original production, written by two women. I should mention that one of them was Lucy Simon, and Lucy Simon was Carly Simon's sister. And she just passed away this year. And leading a very kind of female-driven story with big romantic elements that, appeal to me as a woman, and I know appeal to a lot of people. It's very lush and beautiful. And this production, this latest revival was directed by Warren Carlyle. Now, if that name sounds familiar, Warren Carlyle is a fairly prominent Broadway choreographer, and he has a few directing credits to his name, I've noticed. But most of his credits are choreography. Now, that's not to say you can't be a good director and a choreographer. Some of the most dynamic directors we've ever had on a Broadway stage started out as choreographers and had that multi-hyphenate. Jerome Robbins, Bob Fosse, Gower Champion, Gene Kelly. Warren Carlyle, his most recent credit is that he choreographed the Broadway revival of The Music Man, the Hugh Jackman one. So there's that. But he directed this production, and one of the things that they were talking about a lot in the publicity was that they made cuts to the book. It's a big show. It's a big show with a big ensemble, not unlike a lot of musicals from that era. One of the cuts that they made, or changes that they made, which is a good thing, is that the show has a lot of songs in Hindu, but originally they were essentially nonsense. So that has been remedied. But the other thing they said is that they shaved off about 20 minutes from the book. I just find that really interesting because I was just looking online right now at the original Broadway production's Tony nominations, and they were nominated for 6 Tonys. They won 3. One was for scenic design. One was for Daisy Egan for best performance by a featured actress in a musical. Notice not lead actor, featured, so kid role. And best book. So book, featured actress, and scenic design all won Tony Awards. And I find that really interesting because this latest production, those were kind of the 3 elements that were lacking the most for me. The biggest problems for me were the cuts and the direction. And I'm sorry to say that. Even when actors weren't rising to their capabilities, I never blamed it on them, certainly not the child actors. It all really came down to the direction. Now, I don't have the script in front of me, so I'm not going to nitpick through it. But I have seen The Secret Garden before. I saw a production at the Chance Theater in Anaheim quite a few years ago. And it was a black box space. I don't even think it was community theater. It was a step above community theater. I think they're kind of bumped up to maybe something a little more professional now. It was a beautiful production, and I really loved it. I was really moved. I had a wonderful time. I connected to the story and the characters, and I got swept away with it. They didn't have any major budget, just simple set, lighting, projections, good actors, good singers. The Secret Garden is actually a favorite of Little Theater because it does have so many parts and a big ensemble. There's a lot to do, and kid roles. But I think it's really telling that I recall feeling more seeing that little black box theater production than I did seeing this major revival. I think the cuts make it feel like the story is very rushed. So I'm looking through the songs. I'm comparing my program to, a song list online from the original production. Act 1 is fairly intact. If there were cuts made, it was probably to the book, but all the songs are pretty much there. But then the second act is where it gets kind of hard. They cut a lot of the flashbacks, and one of the main flashbacks they cut is this quartet between Archibald, Lily, Neville, and Rose, Lily's sister, Mary's mother. And it's all about how Lily wants to marry Archie, and Rose is like, "You can't, he's a hunchback, he's creepy," and Lily's like, I love him, I'm going to do it. And then Neville and Archie are having like a fight at the same time because Neville's secretly in love with Lily. They cut that whole thing. And I mean, on the one hand, I guess it is what the kids call filler these days, but on the other hand, I don't think character development is filler. Archie and Neville are alive, so they get to kind of have scenes in the present, but because Lily, and to a lesser extent Rose, appear as ghosts so prominently throughout the show, it feels needed. I do think this production cut down Mary's parents' ghosts quite a lot. In the program for The Secret Garden, Race You to the Top of the Morning is there, but he definitely didn't perform it during the show, so that must have been a cut in rehearsals or previews. And that really bums me out. Again, it's probably filler, but it was something soft and sentimental and a connection between Archibald and Colin. I just hear Mandy Patinkin singing it, with his nice soft falsetto. I don't know if the guy couldn't pull it off. I mean, I don't know. Like, Derek Davis was really good. He was an amazing singer. I don't know why he couldn't. I feel like it had to be them making cuts. The second act is cut down a lot. There's a lot of songs that are cut. A lot of the Maze reprises are cut. I feel like Ben's role, the caretaker of the garden, the kind of old man role. But they did a lot of shuffling of songs, now that I notice. The Girl I Mean to Be is supposed to be at the top of Act 2, but they put it in the middle of Act 1. They got rid of these reprises of The House Upon the Hill. I didn't like it. I didn't like the cuts, and I didn't like the restructuring. I didn't feel that longing, that torture that Archibald felt when he would go away, why he keeps going away from the house. I didn't get that sense. I didn't get a sense that he was doing that at all. Neville didn't seem as villainous as he does. He didn't seem like anything. I do think Aaron Laser, though, really does sing a lot like Hugh Jackman, I have to say. Okay, so the direction I didn't like. I don't think the kids were directed very well. Now, I will say I saw the understudy or the standby for Mary. It was a Sunday night, the night of the Oscars, so it was probably a good time to have her on. But neither her nor Colin were directed very well. I didn't get a sense of Colin being really kind of a brat. I didn't get that Mary's kind of walls were up. The other thing that bothered me was the set design. Now, I know the show wants to tour, so there's probably a level of minimalism going on, but I think that detracts from the title of the show, The Garden. Like, it worked when you were inside the manor and there was nothing to evoke the garden. There was a big cutout of a tree in a circle upstage, and there was this big stupid swirl that was on the stage the whole time, and we were up in the balcony, and it would block some of the actors when they would be like coming down the stairs in the manor. It was just so cumbersome and unnecessary and didn't evoke a garden. Like, I felt like just some little set pieces of some shrubs would have helped. The lighting wasn't even that great. I mean, there was when Mary discovers the door, if you look at the Tony Awards performance, even on that weird early 90s stage, it feels more magical than what they did with this. It was like a Hobbit door. Like, that was cool. They just zipped through everything. I didn't feel any connections to any of the characters, and I didn't feel many connections between them. So one of the weird directing choices was that some elements would be introduced, but they didn't seem connected or to be making a point. It just seemed like cool imagery. At the very beginning, Mary is sitting there, in India, and she's playing with a little sandbox. Nothing about sand or the sandbox ever comes back. At the end of Act 1, she gets caught in a storm, and they have this effect where it's just raining in the center of the stage, and she's looking up and the water is falling on her. So, that's that. Nothing like that ever happens again. So one of the reasons why Mary ends up at Misselthwaite Manor is that she's orphaned because she lives in India and there's a cholera epidemic and her parents are killed off by cholera and everyone they know. So cholera is represented by a dancing girl in a unitard with a red scarf. I got cholera! I actually know the girl. Her name's Kelly Dorney. She's an LA actor. She's very good, but it's a weird choice. She shows up at the beginning of Act 1 and at the end of Act 1 and never again. And it's distracting. Instead of kind of focusing on how these ghosts are kind of haunting Mary and singing this creepy, loud choral music, you're watching like Cirque du Soleil. It's like it's a choice, but then again, it doesn't feel connected. It just feels like Warren Carlyle is a choreographer and it was a cool opportunity to have some kind of balletic, modern dance, some lyrical scarf throwing on stage. I didn't like it. Julia Lester played Martha, and Martha's one of my favorite parts in the show. She got the most applause when she sang Hold On. Hold On got a big reaction from the audience, myself included. I kept wanting that throughout the show, and it took her and that song to make it happen. I think it's also because we felt a connection between her and Mary for whatever reason, more than Mary and any other characters. So that was a great moment. John Michael Lyles played Dickon, and he was good. Winters on the Wing was okay. I felt like Wick was a lot better. They moved Wick to the beginning of Act 2, in the place of the girl I mean to be. He's like a lot more sprightly. He's less like newsboy cap and like warm clothes and more like puckish, impish spirit, which, it didn't really bother me either way. He was good. Sierra Boggess, beautiful. It was my first time seeing her on stage, and lovely, stunning. I could listen to her forever. She sounded so beautiful on all those amazing songs. Derek Davis and Aaron Laser, they sang great. They were good, but like, I just feel like they were directed poorly. Lily's eyes, instead of just letting them sing, they were in this ballroom, I think. And Mary was walking around with a candelabra and Lily was like floating behind her. And so they were in the middle of the room watching her walk around and kind of comparing them. And it kind of was like, okay, it felt distracting and I couldn't really, I don't know. That's the big song in the show that really is supposed to get to you. But same with A Bit of Earth. A Bit of Earth, I felt like it's supposed to be a bit more of a sucker punch, and it just wasn't. He just kind of was like, oh, she wants a bit of Earth, okay. I don't know, you guys. I really love this show, and I felt a little let down by this production. Again, I want to reiterate that the cast was truly amazing, and they sounded beautiful, and the children in the show were great. I just wish the whole thing had been directed better, and I wish the set design was better. And I wish they didn't make so many cuts to the book. It just felt rushed. It just felt very rushed to me. And I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, this has been an issue with the show since the beginning, or people seem to say it was. But I always liked The Secret Garden for what it was. There's a little magic lost. It felt a little too much like I was looking at a stage and not being transported to, the moors and to a lush garden. So if it tours, you should check it out. If it comes to New York, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to listen to me. But I hope this isn't the final draft. So anyway, it's running for another couple weeks here in LA. So check it out. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.